can better address it, such as the Muleshly area.
Keep the same number of miles on there, definitely. Yeah, try and keep it right around the same number.
So my question is, so whenever, for me, I know Attorney Naz could contest this, there's a stretch here, we go up north, that's horrible that we that we go in for about 6 miles or so. But in terms of maintaining, is that once a year, twice a year? What are we looking at? Because I know with 1,300 miles, do we run through there twice? Or I know during the rainy season, monsoon season, I know we try to help out as much as the courtesy blade. So I guess we need to be clear on that as well too.
Who's prioritizing the road? Which goes first?
That falls on the road director. That is his call. Overseeing the roads is what roads are going to be taking top priority. That he has that function.
And Mr. Chairman, just to address Commissioner Secatero's question, the maintain road list is a specific list that we use for dual purposes. One is we identify which roads this commission directs to maintain. But secondly, it states that it's telling the state what we maintain so that they provide funds through the Department of Transportation through fuel tax. The funds they provide for the Department of Transportation provide for one grading a year. It's up to this board through its policy and through its road directors to say we're going to go with one a year, or this is a high traffic area, we're going to do a lot more. And those are individual decisions. It doesn't limit you to once a year, but that's what the list provides. The state provides for one time based on their funding mechanism. It's up to the board to provide more funding.
So I got a motion from Commissioner Monette and a second from Commissioner Secatero to table what item is it? Resolution 2025-29. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Going forward, I think it's the previous commission, because we changed a couple of seats here, was the opinion to look at what roads were actually the county's legally for that purpose. And we have issues with the Forest Service and the BLM to see if there was monies that we could get from them to help us with those roads. At no point did I know I didn't want to eliminate anybody having service. This is a way of stirring the pot to get things in order. But I think going forward, this commission is of the same opinion that just because it's not legally a county road and you're entitled to those services that you've been used to, that we're going to continue to do it, but try and get revenues from other entities or do what we have to. And the biggest elephant in the room is the budget. So that's one thing I think going forward we'll have to do. But Stephanie sitting up there up front, she's pretty good with money. She'll find it for us, and if it doesn't work out. But yeah, I think that's what we're going to do going forward. So I think you can feel confident that you're going to get your roads serviced. Just a matter of trying to find more revenues for you.
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead.
If the motion passes, we will make sure that we have a room big enough for everybody to fit in. It may not be the manager's room. It may be in here. There'll be some place we can get the maps up, or something bigger, but something where we can accommodate everybody if we have to move the meeting somewhere.
And to the public, if you're one of those you have a different name for roads, that form that he has, if you fill it out again, so that when we have this meeting that we include those roads in all that discussion. Go ahead.
Where is that form located? I haven't seen anything.
The county manager has one.
Feel free to get with me at any time and I can forward it off to you. We have printed copies up in the manager's office that you can pick up.
Okay.
So did we vote?
No, we haven't yet.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No. So opposed motion, resolution 2025 is tabled. Item I, consideration of resolution 2025-30. fiscal year 25 DGA second quarter report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. At this time, I'll go ahead and call up our finance director to go ahead and talk about the second quarter report.
Chairman, Commissioners, what you have before you is our FY25 second quarter report. The report contains our expenses, our revenues, our transfers in, our transfers out, our liabilities, and our available cash. I went through and I made notes of importance based on where each fund was at within each category. So expenses, I'll touch on what seems overexpended or unexpended on revenues, what seems under budget, what's over budget, and then the same with transfers. To start with our expenses, there's Fund 418, that's the LPF fund. You'll notice that it only has 30.86% remaining. That's standard for law enforcement protection funds, and those are utilized first when we purchase safety equipment. Yes, sir.
What tab are we looking at?
I'm not positive of the tabs, but it's gonna be the expense report, and then within the expense report, it's going to be the expenses for fund scale. So that's going to be
With the resolution, first of all, the resolution 2025-30, it only scanned and then it sent the first page, and that's it. As far as I'm trying to find.
There should be 67 pages of financial.
We just have the regular report, like pay quote report.
If not, I have it here for you and I can hand it to you while I'm speaking about it at the top of the list.
Go ahead, continue.
Okay. So Fund 418, that has 30.86% remaining. That's standard. It's the law enforcement protection funds, and those are utilized first when we purchase safety equipment for training for Sheriff's Department. And we have to end that fund each year with a zero balance. So they have to be spent before our general fund donor. Fund 420 is our technology fund. You'll see that it shows a 4.42% balance remaining. And that's because the IT contract was approved after the budget was adopted for the new services. So it will be requested at your next meeting in order to increase those expenses based on the contract. And the only other fund in expenses that was a little different was Fund 519, and those were geo bond expenses. You're only showing 1.56% remaining. And that's because the entire debt and interest payments have been paid out for the fiscal years. So you're not going to experience any more expenses out of that fund. Every other fund is operating between the 45 to 50, over 50%. So everybody else is doing really good as far as expenses go. As far as revenues go, general fund will start with the GRT. It's anticipated to come in over budget because we've had a few significant projects experienced in the county the last few months. Fund 402, they touched on that earlier. Those road revenues are outstanding by 81.5% when you're reviewing your quarterly report. Those are uncollected primarily because LGRF haven't been dispersed yet, and Title I funding isn't received until June. So we don't get that primary bit of funding for the road department until the very end of the year. Because of this, you'll notice in that investment presentation that there was $400,000 assigned to investment to the road department, that I'll be transferring that investment liability to the general fund to release those operational funds for the road department so that their operational cash isn't tied up in investment. And that portfolio or that fund kind of looks a little better when you're looking at it as far as operational cash goes. Fund 492 is the only other one in revenues. You'll notice that the fund has over collected revenues for the year, and that's due to an increase in tower modifications throughout the county. There's been a significant amount coming in, so the revenue for that has been significant. Again, that revenue is tied to towers, so it's supposed to be used specifically for towers. There's nothing we can do for it with it, but a bar will have to be requested to acknowledge that increase in revenue, as well as the increase in expenses on the other side when those are adding up. And then that leaves us with transfers. The general fund shows that it's over budget in transfers, and that's because specifically with the DWI department in mind, they're a grant. So when we're doing their grant, we fill out these transfers as expenses. So they're currently budgeted as expenses from DWI paid to a vendor, but what it actually is a transfer of our actual experienced transactions, and then a portion of that is given to the DWI department because they reside in our building. So it's just moving that from an expense to a transfer. It's still built into the budget. It just doesn't show that way because it's a grant fund. Then we have Fund 415, that's detention center. Your transfers are currently at 48.14% at the end of the half a year. So with that, they are spending responsibly and within their budget at the half year mark. So that's good news going forward because that's the primary subsidy fund for the general fund. So we're subsidizing the detention center to the tune of $2 million each year. And that means they're staying within their budget. We're not over transferring and we're thankful. With all that, that's all I have at this point, unless you have any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem. Did any of you want to see this copy of our financials in there? Vice Chair
I'm good.
Secretary?
Secretary, you want to see the copy?
No,
Motion to approve?
Second.
I got a motion to approve from Commissioner Montoya and a second from Commissioner Net, resolution 2025-30, fiscal year second quarter report. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, resolution 2025-30 passes. Consideration of resolution 2025-31, fiscal year grant application with DFA local driving while intoxicated bureau.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. This is a continuing grant that we've had, and this is the renewal cycle for it. So what we did a little bit differently this year with it is we looked at different ways of getting more committee members involved in the drafting of the actual application. And we're looking at focusing on different ways of how to target specific populations within the detention center prior to release. So rather than completely focusing on post-release, we're looking more at pre-release this year. And with that, I would make the recommendation that we approve resolution 2025-31.
So moved.
A second. Got a motion from Commissioner Monet and a second from Commissioner Gonzalez for the approval of resolution 2025-31. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, resolution 2025-31 passes. Item K, consideration of resolution 2025-32, fiscal year 26 DWI grant program alcohol detoxification grant funding application.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Ditto.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Got a motion from Commissioner Monet and a second from Commissioner Montoya for consideration of resolution 2025-32. All in favor? Opposed? Hearing none, resolution 2025-32 passes. Item I, consideration of resolution 2025-33, speed hump policy revised.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the board, at this time, I will go ahead and turn it over to Commissioner Monet.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, the reason this is on here is we looked at speed humps that have been put in the not too distant past, and according to the county policy, they had to be engineered, and that cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars. And it's not something that I feel we should be wasting our money on when we can use that money for a lot better projects. I don't think we need to go through all that to get this done. And we have removed, I've had legal look at this, and we removed the part where it has to be engineered by a certified engineer, but it does have the stipulations that they do need to follow, correct?
Yes, Commissioner Burnett, basically, the changes are fairly simple. It does require that the road superintendent conduct a formal review. However, it says that you may obtain an engineering study, but that it's not required. Certainly, this is something where we would be relying on the expertise of our road department, more heavily. Certainly because, every time you have an engineer, you protect yourself from liability. When you don't have one, of course, there's more, but again, there's also times when common sense can just control the situation, and that's really a decision for the board whether it would like to require those studies or whether it would like to just rely on the expertise of the road department. Now, the remaining of the policy remains the same, that, you know, people can come to the commission with a petition process to install speed humps or have them removed. The commission also on its own retains the discretion to do that on its own, whether or not there's a petition in certain situations.
The manager and I spoke, and we figured that money, the tens of thousands of dollars, could have been put to a lot better use as far as we're looking at the budget of the road department and where we're at. And that money could have been used to help maintain other roads.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Commissioner Monette and I did have this discussion as well as with legal. And one of the things we're looking at administratively is the removal of the speed humps is one of those issues that continues to be brought forward. And I think this new change is going to make it a whole lot easier administratively. And it's going to be able to allow us to actually engage in conversations with the constituency prior to the implementation of any speed humps, rather than what appeared to be a situation where somebody could get the study done, the engineer comes in and says, this is what it is. And then there was no way to actually have discussion as to, hey, is this truly needed or can we abridge this? So I would recommend these changes administratively, that this is not going to hinder my job whatsoever. And I think it's actually going to improve relations between the manager's office and the general public.
Question. Who do we utilize in regards to the engineer firm?
I think so.
I believe the majority of the time it was Dennis Engineering.
On the subject of engineered, I spent the weekend in a county that has a lot more money than we do, but they have speed bumps too. And I would venture to say that they were a lot less expensive. So I don't know if that's a venture we can look down where we get pre-engineered for the purposes if there's a request and it passes and all that stuff. So that would be a cost saving. We're not paying those engineering fees. So I'll get you the name of the county.
Motion to approve resolution 2025-33.
Second.
What was that? Aye.
Yes, sir.
Got a motion from Commissioner Monette and a second from Commissioner Montoya for approval of resolution revised 2025-33 speed humps. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Resolution 2025-33. Item M, consideration of DWI MOU with Department of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. This is another one of those that it's already been in place. This is a continuation. We just had to update the MOU for the new year. So I'd recommend its adoption.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion from Commissioner Secretero and a second from Commissioner Monette for the resolution of the DWI program with the Department of Finance. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item N, consideration of statement of assurances for local DWI grant and distribution program for fiscal year 2026, June 1, 25 to June 30, 2026.
Thank you. This is ditto.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion from Commissioner Gonzalez and a second from Commissioner for the approval for a statement of assurance of the local DWI grant for fiscal year 2026. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Clarification real quick. This is Athena Gasumas again for the DWI office. Just so we have clarification, is one of these for the actual applications? Because all of these have consideration of assurance, consideration of program MOU, and resolutions. Is there one that the commission needs to sign that's the actual approval of the applications? And it may have been something we didn't send or is just confusing for us in the actual wording, right? Is that right, Steph?
Right, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, the general approval of the documents allow for the approval of the application. So I think that can be done easily, when you're approving the process. I think
All right, it's just for clarification. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item O, approve request of heat and wall installation of mechanic department.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. This is one of those that in the budget, the money was set aside for this project. We now have it quoted out. And what it's going to do is up there at the North Solero building, which is called Annex 2. This is going to be able to go ahead and wall in for our service area. So we can go ahead and keep the heat in there, or now that the heat's coming in, we can actually cool it as well. And so this was money that was previously pre-approved, so there's no need for a budget request. It's just that we now have all of the bids that have come through to bring it to you. So I would recommend that we go ahead as this project falls within budget.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to approve with a quick comment. I drove through there today. Can we change the sign where it doesn't say Solero and put the county on there?
Had a discussion of that this morning with myself and the new emergency management to figure out what could actually be done and how quickly it could be done. So that's in the works.
It's a good looking place.
Second.
Got a motion from Commissioner Monet and a second from Commissioner Montoya for item O, approval of request of heat and wall installation for mechanic department. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Request passes. Item P, approval MOU with the city of Socorro for the use of Escondido Lake for April 5th, 2025 fishing derby.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Monet, a second from Commissioner Montoya for the approval of MOU for the fishing derby. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. Let's go fishing. Q, direction to staff to publish the title and general summary of ordinance amending the personnel policy ordinance 2016-02 to modify the competition provisions for appointed officials.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I'll let Michelle introduce this, and then I'll explain the process and if it's something the commission is interested in pursuing.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, this is being presented. In the past, while I served as chief deputy, I was able to receive COVID pay. I was able to receive any Christmas bonuses that you all offered. I was able to receive a $500 reward for acquiring my New Mexico Certified County Clerk certification and a Certified Public Official certification. As it comes to my attention, Betty and I are still continuing on with our education, and we're going to be acquiring a couple more certifications. But it's not clearly stated as to what appointed officials may or may not receive and how they actually fall into the policy, if they can receive these additional payments or not.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, currently the personnel policy, which was amended last year as which increased the amount that elected officials were paid, provides that, appointed officials, they get a certain percentage of the salary. Generally, the personnel policy has been silent as far as the, Christmas additions to payroll as well as the COVID money. That's all. No?
Questions?
I don't know.
It's silent on the COVID money and, for instance, the one-time addition to payroll. That said, the provision that is not silent would be a section 9.10, which talks about the tuition reimbursement that we're talking about. And it is very specific that it is only for full-time regular employees. To be clear, an appointed official is not a regular employee because this board does not set their terms and conditions of employment nor their work hours. So they are not technically a regular employee. What would be proposed would be to do this a couple of ways. One, we would need to modify that provision to specific, if it's something the board is interested in, to specifically say, to change it to regular employees and appointed officials, you could certainly increase it to also part-time. I mean, if you would like to make changes to that provision. The second would be to make changes to we probably need to add language just in the general provision of the personnel policy that appointed officials are eligible for additions to payroll as well as, for instance, if there's ever COVID money, or let's hope not, but the money without the COVID, how's that? Available, I would suggest that we change that as well. There's two ways to do it. For the tuition, we need to change the policy, the personnel policy for certain. The other portion, we could remove elected officials, their compensation generally from the personnel policy and just do it as a resolution. And that way, we could add those to the resolution. It could be modified easier. It's up to this board how you'd like to proceed. What you would do if, no matter what, the personnel policy will need to be changed. So you would direct staff to publish a change to the policy, at which time next month we will be able to come back and have a public hearing about whether or not you would like to approve those changes. And then if so, it would go into effect 30 days later. My recommendation at this point would be to modify the section regarding tuition reimbursement and then remove appointed officials from the personnel policy and do it. For instance, lots of other counties do it with just a resolution. Valencia County is one of them, where you set the same rate of pay, but that it's removed from the policy and is put into a resolution format, so that you could make it so that if you had a specific change to for instance, a COVID, something unforeseen like COVID money, that can be done by resolution and not be prohibited by by the port ordinance. I will say this, for the elected officials, the Constitution prohibits any of these changes, so it would not affect elected officials. This is only for appointed officials.
Mr. Chair, Board, I'm very uncomfortable with this provision and this request. For the reason being is within our personnel policy, we have ways for our regular full-time employees to better themselves and to further their careers and move up the salary ladder. The appointed officials are already appointed at a specific salary. So anytime there's a salary increase for their superior, they get it. Our regular employees don't have that. And so with the limited funding that we have within this item of the budget, to now open it up to those 4 individuals that are the appointed individuals, I think would be unfair to the rest of our general regular employees. And so I do not recommend any changes. The language in the policy speaks clear, and I think there's ample opportunity for other ways for them to seek different types of remuneration. But to actually have this for appointed officials when they're already paid way above what our regular employees are, I wouldn't be able to go in front of the regular employees and support this.
So Mr. Chair, how many of these appointed officials have been taking extra classes or upgrading their education? Do you know how many hours they're putting into this?
The only request is currently coming from the clerk's office for these requests. The other appointed officials are taking the same classes, but not requesting reimbursement for those classes. So in other words, anytime we send an elected official like we just went to up in Santa Fe for New Mexico counties, they have those classes that would fulfill this obligation. So in other words, we are paying their travel, their housing, and their food to already get this training. And now what they're requesting is that they get an additional amount of money for actually going to the class that we were already paying for. So it's my view is it's kind of double dipping to where we're already providing all of those other benefits, but now they're specifically wanting this additional sum for something that they're supposed to do anyway as an appointed official.
So we're paying for the classes. It's not coming out of their pocket to pay for the class.
Correct. There isn't any out-of-pocket expense for them.
So they're actually just asking for a salary for attending the class.
It's basically a one-time tuition reimbursement that's based upon the budget. So the commission sets a certain amount for the budget, for a tuition reimbursement. And that can be applied for. So it's not an increase to the salary, but it's an increase it would be a payment for the tuition reimbursement.
Not technically a salary, but
The
a
benefit.
salary. Right.
Yes, sir.
Chairman, Commissioners, if I may, it's not actually a tuition reimbursement. It's listed in the policy as a reward
Correct.
or a
A
stipend
payment.
for completing the full certification. So prior, again, as my time as chief deputy, when I completed those 2 certifications, I was awarded those. So now that the roles have changed and we're continuing on, and asking for it to be awarded for Betty to receive this, it's now stated that she can't. So that's where I'm asking for clarification on what appointed officials are actually allowed to receive.
I don't see why we can't reward regardless who they are just because they're appointed an elected official, don't mean we should neglect them in any way.
I think
Chairman,
there's arguments.
if I may. Also, I totally understand as an elected official that I cannot receive it, and I get that 100%. I'm just asking for my appointed and all the other appointed.
Certainly, and that's why this is a policy decision. And there are good arguments both ways on policy decisions. Certainly the argument is, what they did that, they should have the same opportunities as everyone else to receive that tuition stipend or whatever you would like to call it. And I believe it's up to $800. It is based on budget. So of course, let's say, for instance, the budget was, X amount and 50 employees applied that year. Well, then, you're going to get less than the maximum amount. So, there's an argument that, they're benefiting the county by obtaining this education and you should provide it to them. There's also, the argument the other way would be that since the commission doesn't control the terms and conditions of employment, let's say, for instance, you don't have Michelle, who's a nice county clerk, but you have an evil county clerk, and she says, my employee will not go to any class ever. You're not allowed to. Or then they don't have the same policy freedom as a regular employee does. Or for instance, that you have a county clerk that says you will go to all these classes, but you don't have to. You don't have to work very much. You just don't have that control. So without that control that regular employees have, then the argument is, then they shouldn't receive the same benefit. But those are policy decisions that is up to this board to make. There's pros and cons for each.
Now, when employees receive this compensation, is it upon completion or for attendance?
You have to return with a certification.
So let me kind of explain it. When you go to these, and we just went to the last one up in Santa Fe just a couple weeks ago. As appointed officials and elected officials that go, they get to go. The regular employees are left at the office doing the day-to-day work. They don't have the opportunity to go to these classes. So in order for this to be fair, the regular employees would have had to have the same opportunity to attend the classes, but because they're not an elected or appointed official, they don't get to go. My administrative team, some of them had to stay back and actually run everything while I was up there taking those trainings. So that's where I think it's a little bit different when you start treating them, because we're not giving the same opportunities to our regular employees. If there were the regular opportunities, I would say wholeheartedly, let's go ahead, let's put this in the policy and go. But because there aren't those same opportunities, I think this is a misleading request because they already have a leg up because they are automatically get to go to those.
Let me point out one additional thing for the policy. Now we're talking about several different things here. One, we're talking about the Christmas bonus or COVID funds. That is one aspect of the request that we're talking about. And the second aspect of the request is talking about section 9.10 of the personnel policy, which is tuition reimbursement. Now, tuition reimbursement is basically if an employee goes and betters themselves and they're paying tuition, then they're supposed to receive some amount back. And if you're not paying any tuition, that doesn't apply. Now, I understand this has been incorrectly applied in the past. Our manager has correctly applied it currently, but that would be a different change. And so that's where I want to make clear, and also from Michelle, if you're going to a class that's completely paid for, you shouldn't under the current policy get tuition reimbursement, which is section 9.10. Because you're not paying for it. And I'm not sure, Michelle, whether or not we're talking about the Association of County certification. If the county's paying for it and you receive tuition reimbursement, then that's probably a misapplication of the policy. Now, that doesn't mean you can't change that policy as well and give a tuition and give a reward for obtaining a certification, but that's not what 9.10 says. It's tuition reimbursement.
So in our current policy, there was never a reward for attendance certification? So to speak?
There, except for the county assessor, which is a statutory reimbursement. No, there's not a reward for obtaining a certification. You have to pay tuition, you obtain a certification, you get tuition reimbursement for books, and it specifically says for books and those sorts of things.
There actually is in the policy a portion that specifically states New Mexico Edge course certifications. I don't have it in front of me, but there is one and it speaks of the $500 reward for receiving those certifications.
Those classes are only available during the session? The workshops are not available to the rest of the employees?
Throughout the year, they're available.
They're available?
4 or 5 times a year they have classes.
Most of the time, those classes are when the elected officials have conferences. But most of the time to send the regular staff to get that, it's very problematic, especially with our smaller departments. It makes it problematic.
And Michelle's correct. Section 9.9 allows for the board. Okay. Yeah. Section 9.10 is tuition reimbursement. Michelle, you're right. I will say this, if you direct the publication to change these provisions, it's not approving it now, it's just setting it for a public hearing so that this matter can be debated in a month, if you move forward with just direction to publish.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would make the motion to give staff direction to publish just so we can have that debate at the next meeting.
Second.
Got a motion from Commissioner Bonet and a second from Commissioner Montoya to go ahead and publish the field title and general summary of the ordinance amending the personnel policy, ordinance 2016-02. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. R, acknowledge personnel changes. They have them. So. Okay, personnel changes. Fred Berger, effective 2/3/2025, Emergency Services Director, new hire, salary $78,977.60. Nerayo Array, 217, Cadet Sheriff's Department, new hire, salary $23.44 an hour. And then we have Walter Gensler, road projects foreman, resigned. That was effective 1/10/2025. Antonio Guerrero, equipment operator, promotion, road department, to 1809 an hour. That's effective 2/3/21. Nathan Vega, 1/20/25, road project supervisor, promotion, 2241 an hour. And that's all. I make a motion to approve.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Gonzalez and a second by Commissioner Montes for the approval of the personnel changes as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Personnel changes are approved. Financial action items, approval of vendor checks and payroll checks, we do them together.
Make that motion. So before I make that motion, the request that I make is, you hear me? Yeah, okay. The only request I make is, letterhead be updated in regards to current board members. To the, payroll dated, February 11th.
I will get that.
Okay, all right. All right, so let's go ahead and proceed. I'll make a motion in regards to combining 12A and 12B. 12A, approval of vendor checks dated for February 10th in the amount of $3 million, $3,225.92. And then 12B, approval of payroll checks dated for February 11th in terms of two pay periods, one January 9th in the amount of $200.38, and the second payroll for January 23rd in the amount of $309,773.69.
Second.
Got a motion from Commissioner Secretarial and a second from Commissioner Monette for the approval of the vendor and the payroll checks. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Pay the bill. Executive session, motion and roll call vote to go into executive session and that pursuant to New Mexico State Statute, Section 1015-1, only the following matter will be discussed in closed session. Pending litigation, Chavez versus Socorro County, New Mexico State Ethics Commission versus CLLA, personnel matter, Jose Gonzalez and Esmeralda Amigo. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Montoya,
Yes.
Commissioner Monet,
Yes.
Chairman Gonzalez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Secretarial,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Aguilar.
We're in executive.
Don't screw us up, Joe.
What happens?
Mr. Chairman, make a motion.
Yeah, I need a motion and vote to return to regular session.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion, we go back into regular session to section 10-15-1. The only matters discussed were those listed and taken.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Or roll call, right?
Aye, roll call vote.
Commissioner Montoya,
Yes.
Commissioner Monette,
Yes.
Chair Gonzalez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Secretary,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Aguilar.
Next, commission meeting, March 11th, 2025 at 5 p.m. I need a motion to adjourn, just adjourn, no?
Yes, sir.
We're adjourned at 7:27.
Oh, you're not gonna read that last piece? In terms of,
Oh my gosh. All
we were
right, 8.
discussing closed session? Okay.
You did it.
You guys are having fun in there.
Well,
All righty.